When they think about caregiving, they think of the physical aspect of caregiving. And so when they see our relationship, they see how I am Cole's caregiver physically, but there are so many aspects to caregiving that is oftentimes behind closed doors or even invisible in a sense, like being an emotional caregiver. And we've opened up so much about how Cole is such a huge emotional caregiver for me.
1, 2, 3, let's go! Everything you know about disability is wrong!
Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new season of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
We're your hosts. I'm Lily Newton.
And I'm Erin Hawley.
The topic of today's episode is misconceptions around caregiving. So often caregiving is thought of as this one non-disabled person is taking care entirely of a disabled loved one. However, in reality, caregiving takes a lot of different forms. There are plenty of disabled caregivers, and caregiving is often a two-way street. So I'm really excited for our guests. It's going to be a great episode.
Yes, and today on the show, we have Cole and Charisma Sydnor.
Thank you for having us. This is such a big topic for us, so we're so happy to be here.
Yes.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. We have wanted to have you on the show for a long time. Guests, also known as Roll with Cole and Charisma on YouTube. Cole and Charisma are an interabled and interracial couple who started their YouTube channel on the premise of sharing their lives with friends and family who are simply curious about their relationship.
And their content ranges from travel videos, lifestyle vlogs, and the couple's first times, and attempting viral challenges. And they've amassed over 2 million followers on social media.
Welcome to the show. I mean, when we were first dreaming of this podcast, you were on our initial vision board of like guests we wanted to have. So it feels so good to have you opening the season. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yay, that makes us so happy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to hear the numbers because, we just started this as like a little side hobby thing and now here we are. It's pretty wild.
7 years later.
But that makes so much sense because your content is so authentic. And I think that's what makes it like so. It's why I, as a viewer, like just want to watch every single thing because it's like, oh, I feel like I'm just hanging out with you guys.
Thank you.
I love that. We try that. We try to make that happen.
Let's go ahead and do our audio description. So I will start. This is Lily speaking. I am a mixed race person and I have half blonde, half brown hair split down the middle like Cruella de Vil. And behind me, there is a bunch of disability books and fidget toys and stuff.
Hi, this is Erin speaking. I'm a white woman with red hair and blue eyes, and I'm wearing a black, blue and red shirt, and I'm in my bedroom, which is very dark. And I'll pass it to Cole.
I am a white man. I have about shoulder length curly hair, blue eyes, some short facial hair, and I'm wearing a purple sweater sitting beside my beautiful wife.
Yes, I am Charisma. I am a Black woman. I have about the same length hair as Cole, but it is dark brown and shoulder length and straight. I have brown eyes and and I have a V-neck brown sweater on and we are sitting in our office.
Yes, we had a nice little shelf behind us with some pictures.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's very aesthetic and the colors of the sweaters with the colors of the background. So you did it up for us today. We love it.
Thank you.
Well, for some people, they might have met you through a profile that came out in the New York Times after your wedding. This is one of the first pieces of content I was introduced to the two of you from, and it's an awesome write-up. And sorry for going back in time a bit, but I could not start with this. So the write-up tells the story of how you both first met. And for listeners who maybe have not read the piece or don't know that story, can you tell us about how you first met each other and what that initial connection was?
Absolutely. We have two different stories of how we met. Cole likes to tell his version. I like to tell my version. So ladies first, right? We'll start with my version.
First, go ahead.
So we met at Sheltering Arms and I was working there as a rehab technician, working under occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech language pathologist. And I work in the inpatient side of the hospital. So I was just doing my thing, going through another part of the hospital, which is called NeuroFit, which Cole used as a gym, essentially, because finding accessible gyms are very hard to come by. And I'm walking through the room, and all of a sudden I hear this, "Hey." And I look, and I was like, oh, he's talking to me.
yeah.
I was very taken aback, but he was very charming, very sweet. And that was, in my mind, how we met. But Cole has a different version of how we met in his mind.
Well, what stresses me out was when I was going into rehab and, Charisma started, helping out in our area a little bit. One of the first things that happened was she came in to help me get off of the FES bike. The FES bike is the functional electrical stimulator bike that helps me operate like a little pedal bike, stationary, and it requires pads. And these pads go all over my legs and my buttocks. So here I was sitting in a chair, and this cute girl that I was interested in was coming in and having to pull these pads off of my butt. Like when I'm at the tail end of my workout, exhausted, I hope I didn't smell. That was super embarrassing for me. But fortunately, Charisma didn't even bat an eye at that. That was just another day at work. So.
Didn't think much of it. I was actually nervous. Like, oh my gosh, this cute guy, I'm taking off the pads. I'm more nervous about how I look. I'm also at work sweating.
Yeah.
I could smell as well, so.
It's like we started at second base somehow.
Yeah. But that was our meeting story. Cole slid into my DM shortly after that, after attending a gala together.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. I mean, I don't even know when we started dating. It felt like since that first, hey, we were
I know.
like this. Like,
after a while, we looked at each other and we're like, are we like boyfriend, girlfriend? Or when did we, is this official?
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was just so comfortable right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's something that can happen in interabled and disabled relationships where there is that level of the level of intimacy starts kind of high because there is this is who I am, this is what I need, and it's all on the table from the beginning.
Yes, I love that. I think that's what allowed us to get so close. There was a level of vulnerability that you have in this dynamic that you don't often have in non-disabled relationships, and I love it.
Yeah. And we were just on the same page too, from the very start, like literally on our first date at dinner, we're talking about like what we want out of life.
Yeah.
We were both looking for our person. We weren't interested in messing around. And we told each other right from the gate, we were like, look, if you're not feeling it, it's cool. Let's go our separate ways because I'm looking for my person. She felt the same way and we were feeling it the whole time. So here we are.
Very stars aligned. I love that. That's so wonderful.
So romantic. I love it. In a relationship, when you're disabled, or your partner is, or you both are disabled, I think there's a level of maturity in the relationship that you kind of start off with, which I think is helpful as a relationship goes on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Cole being so vulnerable with me and sharing that aspect of his disability with me allowed me to open up in our relationship much sooner and easier than I did in previous relationships.
Yeah, and in regard to relationships and maturity, a really challenging part of acquiring a disability is that you have a lot of relationships you formed that completely change once you've acquired this disability. And it was very enlightening to see that change happening and watch some of these relationships become something different or just completely fizzle and just kind of go away. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, and that's why I told Charisma from the beginning, I want a full on relationship. I want to be locked in with someone, and every aspect of, the way you can be locked into someone.
Yeah.
And that maturity, I think, was definitely brought on by watching relationships just kind of fizzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because that is something my chronic pain didn't start until later in life. And there has been a level of, there's some grief on the relationships and how they were before. And there is something so fulfilling to find a relationship that's this feels so whole and there's not this what it was before. And my partner and my fiance, we were together before my pain had started, and so there is kind of that balance of I've been autistic the whole time, so I think he already knew that, and that allowed us to have the kind of intimacy that disability allows for. But yeah, it is certainly a level of vulnerability that I think it makes sense that it worked because you two were willing to be open about what you were looking for. You know, our first season of this show was entirely about love and dating because that's such a big misconception people have. They just think like disabled people are not on the apps, and we are. Like we're getting in DMs, and I think that so when we were doing that season, you know, obviously there's like it can be kind of traumatic to meet people and then not understand disability or not understand their own ableism, and that being like a constant thing, I think could stop someone from being willing to be open. So I think it's really great that you were able to be like, nope, this is what I'm looking for. If this works, it's going to work. If not, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a beauty in transparency.
Yeah. Do you think Charisma already being in this space of kind of care, do you think that allowed you to feel comfortable quickly, Cole? Like meeting her, and I know she wasn't your caretaker in that hospital setting, but knowing that she had chosen to work in that path?
Yeah, I think it definitely made a difference. I had unfortunately become accustomed to going on a date and my disability being a big topic of conversation. And so like I thought that was like normal. And so something that struck me about going on a date with Charisma was that really wasn't the focus of the conversation. She wanted to get to know me and who I was, and not just like how I broke my neck. What does that mean? What can I feel? What can I use? It wasn't really about that, because Charisma, I think, had been around enough individuals and had enough experience with quadriplegics specifically that she was able to just, you know, get right past that and get after me. And I loved that. And that really endeared me to her like right away.
Yeah, well, thank you. And like I worked in the hospital setting, but I also had and have several family members with disabilities. So I grew up around disability my entire life. So I think that was very normalized for me, just getting to know someone for who they are and not their disability. So it was, but that's how it should be. I feel like I'm no one special for that. It's just how it should be for everyone. We should all normalize just getting to know people for who they are. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is it should be normal, but there is just like a common acceptance of, oh, this is a disabled person. Let's ask really invasive questions.
Yeah, right away.
So frustrating.
And I think you mentioned like Charisma, you have family who are disabled. And I do think that, you know, being, I don't want to say exposed, but like being in community with other disabled people, it like as Lily says, it normalizes disability.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like, you know, a big thing to date somebody who is disabled.
Exactly.
And I think like making sure that people, the community and the public understand disability, I think dating is one of those things that will get easier for people.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree
This
too.
is exactly why we started, you know, doing what we do and sharing our lives, because we just wanted people to see an example of what an interabled relationship would look like and how it works and how it's beautiful, just as beautiful as a non-disabled relationship.
I know. And disabled people are just people. Like I just, it's so frustrating that, you know, having a disability carries all of these connotations, but also misconceptions, you know, and that's just, it's so frustrating, because at the end of the day, we're all people and we should get to know each other as people first.
Yeah, and it's hard to get over that. Like, so many people don't even think dating and disability is a thing. And like getting people to see that it is a thing, especially on YouTube. I'm sure you get a lot of horrible comments, but I do think what you're doing is so important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do get some bad comments.
I know, it's sometimes.
Man.
So, you've been making videos together for over 7 years. What have you learned about yourselves and your boundaries in that process?
That is a great question.
Yeah. Boundaries are very interesting in our line of work.
Yes.
Because we had discovered over the 7 years that some of our most relatable and some of our most helpful content is when we're kind of stepping beyond the boundaries that a normal, I don't want to say normal, but a typical person might have.
Mm-hmm.
Like sharing aspects of my disability that, people would never otherwise see, how a bowel program works, like how I catheterize myself. These are some of our most effective videos at helping people understand my disability.
Yeah.
And they're also some of the most invasive videos into my own private life. So boundaries are a tricky thing because, we want to have our privacy, but we also want to be helpful. So it's a conundrum sometimes.
Yeah, we started off with some pretty strong boundaries, I think, at the beginning. But after doing it for 7 years, you find a level of comfort and you start breaking down some of those boundaries. But it is challenging because that just opens up your world to criticism. And what I've learned about myself is that I need to have tougher skin if I'm going to be in this world. It's challenging how comments and people's opinions can really have an impact on your mental health. And so I've learned, and we both learned, to try to disconnect and have that kind of boundary within ourselves, how much we allow to impact us. And so that has been like the biggest thing we had to learn, is how to take a step back from social media and put our content out there and just kind of leave it at that and not take on the criticism so personally. But it's hard.
Because other than just like the hateful comments and the trolls, also when we do share something like my bowel program, that like people take that as an invitation to offer advice. Like, oh, you should be doing it this way, or oh, you should be doing it this way. And that can be frustrating because we are doing what's best for us and we have a really good idea of what's best for us.
Yeah. And we've gone through trial and error already. This is us finally sharing what works. Like, we already went through that. So it's just so interesting. But again, like, that vulnerable private stuff is also what has been the most helpful, and we love to see the positive comments too. Like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to figure out this aspect of my care routine and I had no idea I could do it that way. And that's great. And it helps improve someone's life. And I'm like, whoa, that's really cool and very fulfilling. Yeah, especially having a spinal cord injury, that is an acquired disability. And there's so many people who have spinal cord injuries yearly, especially in the summer. And so we've gotten a lot of comments from people and family members who had a son or a nephew who recently acquired a spinal cord injury, and they're coming to our videos and learning so much about bowel programs and catheterizing and all of these aspects of an SCI. So we remind ourselves constantly, like, okay, there's so many people that are benefiting from these videos, and we have to just remove ourselves from the negativity and just keep putting content out there, because it's helping way more people than, like, people don't even comment always. There's so many people that don't even comment that we know it's helpful for. So that allows us, I think, to stretch our boundary a little bit more.
Yeah, I like the kind of shift of your boundaries being about, like, what content you're willing to share, and shifting to more of, like, what feelings are you willing to feel, like, rather than what you're going to do. Because I do think that there is a level of that vulnerability, and especially, being willing to talk about the stuff that feels a little taboo to talk about can be really important, and can be freeing for, like, the whole disabled community to be able to be like, yeah, I'm no longer going to view my own spit as gross, because we all deal with this. Like, and like I think that there's a lot of benefit, especially when I think about, like, the neurodivergence, but especially autism in general in the last few years. Like, I'm so grateful for the people who have been willing to share the stuff that was happening behind closed doors that maybe felt embarrassing, or that they had been masking, that then allowed other people to say, like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been masking. And I think that there's definitely a need for vulnerability, but then there's kind of this expectation that's like, well, you've been vulnerable, so now I can expect you to respond in the comments, or expect you to take in what I want you to hear. And it's almost like it almost moves from, like, a boundary to a consent conversation of, like, no, I'm not inviting you in. I'm putting something out there, but I don't want you to come in.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was really well put, actually. Yeah, I like that a lot, because it does feel like over the course of 7 years of sharing vulnerable and private things, there's a sense of entitlement that kind of grows within the community. And if there's anything we don't share, it's like, why? Like, you should do a video about that. And we're like, at some point we do have to maintain those boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially being in a couple too, like you have to take into consideration each other's comfortability with what you're making, and it's a whole other layer than just being an individual content creator.
Exactly. Yeah. Cole's definitely been way more open than I have. That's for sure.
That's been me from the start. I mean, even in the hospital when I had just broken my neck, my mom came in and asked me, she said, hey, there's a lot of people from home that are very curious to know like what's going on with you. And I literally remember telling her, I'm an open book, and that was me projecting a lot of confidence. I also was still like scared about a lot of things, and I still harbored a lot of internal ableism over the next like couple of years with like the realities of like what I needed and the care I needed. But I've always had that mentality because I just think that it's good for the world. I think it makes people feel less alone. I think it offers connection and encouragement, and the more we're connected and encouraged, the better our community is and the stronger our community is.
Yeah, absolutely.
As somebody deeply introverted, I do feel like your videos have helped me be more open in my videos and my online existence. So yeah, you are helping other disabled people.
Yay. That means a lot. Yes.
That's made my day. Thank you.
And I can understand where you're coming from, Aaron, because when we first started our channel, Cole was so open, and I was like, I'd rather be behind the camera. Because it is very hard to be vulnerable and to put yourself out there. So props to you for continuing to do it. Like, you are also helping so many people by sharing your experience as well.
Thank you. So, first of all, what do you both think of when you hear the word caregiving?
I think of love. When I hear the word caregiving, I think it comes from a place of love, and I think it's something that everyone gives and everyone receives. I don't think caregiving is made specifically for any specific person. I think every point in someone's lives, they'll be giving caregiving and they'll be receiving caregiving. I mean, we come out the womb needing a caregiver.
Yeah.
So, and usually we die needing a lot of times needing a caregiver as well. So it's
a mother that just gave birth needs a caregiver.
Exactly. So it's a very important aspect of life.
I agree with all of that. It's definitely all rooted in love.
Yeah.
The word that pops to mind for me is probably support. And the beautiful thing about support is that comes in all shapes and forms and sizes, just like caregiving. And anyone, I believe, is able to support in a lot of those ways.
Exactly.
So that's what pops into my head.
And what are some misconceptions that you've seen online about caregiving? Probably a lot.
A lot. I think because a lot of people, when they think about the word, or when they think about caregiving, they think of the physical aspect of caregiving. And so when they see our relationship, they see how I am Cole's caregiver physically, because they see Cole's disability, they see how I have to help him. But there's so many aspects to caregiving that is oftentimes behind closed doors or even invisible in a sense, like being an emotional caregiver. And we've opened up so much about how Cole is such a huge emotional caregiver for me, and how he fills that role. We actually recently posted a video where I open up about my mental health struggles and my emotional instability, for lack of a better word, and how Cole has just been from day one my emotional caregiver. And at times he has had to show up way more than I have had as a caregiver, because, with the physical caregiving, it's pretty straightforward. We do the same thing every single day. With my emotions, who knows? One day I could be up here, one day I can be down here. And so we try to draw so much attention to how Cole is a truly impactful emotional caregiver for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we've seen over the 7 years in our comment sections is it's really tied up in the physical part, like she was saying, and how it's just going to ruin her.
Yeah.
Like, so many comments about y'all need to hire a caregiver, otherwise Charisma is going to be ruined, or Charisma, you shouldn't like do a lift like that or a transfer because your body's going to be ruined in 10 years.
So that's why you can't get pregnant, because you're being a freaking caregiver. Like, it's just horrible comments and misconceptions.
It's very frustrating, and a lot of that is rooted in misunderstanding, of what our situation is actually like. The reality is, in our relationship, Charisma doesn't have to do a lot of lifting. Like, I'm able to do a majority of the lifting and my transfers and stuff. So like, it's not like Charisma's stressing her body out or straining her body on a regular basis. But we might post a video about how Charisma can get me out of bed in like an emergency situation where she piggybacks me. And everybody's like, oh no, that's terrible. That's not the way you should do it. That's going to destroy her back. I was like, guys, read the caption. Like, that's not it. Also, like, don't assume like what our day-to-day is like.
But the truth is, there's so many tools when it comes to caregiving too. Like, there is going to be a point where baby Cole can't transfer himself. And so we show, okay, we have Hoyer Lift. Like, this exists. Like, there's so many different tools that you can use for caregiving. But I don't know. It's just so interesting because for us, caregiving is just not a huge impact on our relationship. Like, it's just so routine. And we find so much intimacy within caregiving. And I don't know. I can't imagine hiring someone else to be Cole's caregiver because I love that part of our relationship. There's a level of vulnerability. There's a level of intimacy that I think we have because the caregiving is involved. So I don't know. I think the misconception is that it's just overwhelming for me. And I just don't see it that way at all. I think there are times where it can be more challenging, but when you have a partner and you communicate and you share your feelings openly, I think there's a way to manage everything.
Yeah, we can get through it together.
Yeah.
I love that so much. There's so much good stuff you just said in there. And I think it's such a beautiful look at the word caregiving. And I think it really, everything you just said, I hope people, like, we can start to think of caregiving as just, a part of life, like kind of in the same way that we, when we started this podcast 3 years ago, it was like, we just want people to talk about disability because disability is a regular part of life. So is caregiving. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is realizing like that's the interconnectedness of our community, the way we are interdependent and care for one another is a huge part of the story. And I think when I first kind of felt like I was like joining the disability community, like not from the standpoint of getting a disability, but from the standpoint of like really getting to know other disabled people and learning what's going on in disability culture. I think I initially had almost some like negative feelings towards the concept of caregiving because I was always thinking like, especially from an autistic perspective, there's a layer of like, we always hear about parents of autistic kids. We rarely hear about autistic adults and like that level. And for a while, I think I just had this kind of like, no, it takes away from the disability story. And then in the last couple of years, as I'm actually in the disability world and I live with a partner who functions as a caretaker for me often, you see like, no, that's part of the beauty, actually. That's part of the love in this. And Erin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, because I know that sometimes we've had conversations about caregiving and our thoughts change.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had my mom as my main caretaker. And I have a partner now who also does that. But it's still mostly my mom. And she's gonna hate that I said this, but she's 68 years old. And she can still pick me up and toss me around. And her back is fine. So for me, caretaking is about love. And I think, I'm very, very close to my mom. And I think because of that caretaking situation. And it is also, I caretake for her in different ways. Like if she's sick, I'll buy her some soup and, like be emotional support for her. And like caretaking is love.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that you mentioned how you're your mom's caregiver as well, because people just like tend to forget that people with disabilities can also be caregivers, and they're huge. Like again, in our relationship, Cole is, I feel like, a bigger caregiver than I am. Like, so I feel like we forget that everyone can be a caregiver. It is not only left for people who are physically able to give care. There's so many different aspects of giving care that we can't forget about.
Yeah, and it's not just disabled people that need care. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Not disabled people need care too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because it's making me kind of think about the way that this is connected to kind of the misconceptions about like visible versus non-apparent disabilities, that there is this layer of thinking like, well, we think caretaking, we think of a visible disability, but at the same time, people misunderstanding how, how Cole could show up for you, Charisma, as a caregiver. I think that's also part of the deep misunderstanding that mental health is a part of disability, and that, there's like health issues that you might not be able to see are still in this world of disability and care. But because we already have a hard time talking about disability and care in the general population, like, we're not getting that nuanced take. And that's what I hope this podcast can bring, is that understanding. Because I never really connected that the like people wouldn't necessarily see you as the person that would receive care, Charisma, but that's because of their own misconceptions about disability.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see that so much on our channel.
Yeah, well, when we posted this video recently, like, so many of the comments from people are like, yes, like emotional caregivers are so important. Like, we tend to neglect that aspect, and like we neglect looking for that kind of person and that kind of caregiver in our lives. We all need that support at times too. So no, I think it's a very important conversation.
And it doesn't seem like a jump, like for people to understand that. It's like as soon as they just think about not locking caregiving down to physicality, it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like emotional caregiving, yeah, I need that. Like I cry all the time, and I'd love to have someone there to support me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's like, it comes up in my relationship sometimes because if you don't know us, it could seem like we are two non-disabled people. And I think my autism is quite apparent the second you start talking to me. But if you don't know me, you don't know me. And I have a very hard time being around food before eating food. So like cooking and then feeding myself has always been very hard. And he's just taken over that role in my life. And I brought this up in the episode we did with Shane and Hannah, but that so many people have told me like, wow, you hit the jackpot. He's like the best guy ever. And like, yes, I think all those things, but also like, no, this is a caregiving role that we have discussed. And he said, I'm willing to take this on. We can, if it gets to be too much, we can do something like a meal service or something like that. But it is a caregiving situation. And once things are in the world of care, I think in my brain, kind of how you said, Charisma, it's just like not that big of a deal. It's just like, this is what we do. Like, and even like big emotions feel, I think, less scary because it's like, well, this is a part of life and we know how to handle this with care.
Yeah. You get into your routine, you have a plan, you work through the plan, you get back on track, and then you move on with life. It's just a part of the process.
And there's a beauty in that routine, I
Yeah.
think. There's just a synergy and like a flow of life that develops with your caregiver, both ways. And that's one of the most beautiful parts, I think, about this kind of dynamic.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. It's great.
So we've talked about some of the stuff you deal with being online, and I'm interested in how you kind of maintain self-care as these public figures. And also, I think when I say self-care, I mean for you, I'm interested in the question from you both as individuals, but also like relationship care.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, this year I made it. Last year was a very hard year for me mentally with my mental health. So I have been more intentional this year about self-care. So I start every morning with yoga, and it is the best form of self-care I've ever done in my life. It's so great. So that is my big self-care thing. But then also reading. As a couple, we started reading together. And so we're spending a lot of time in bed. We'll get in bed 30 minutes early and then just read our book. Like we're reading, sometimes we're reading the same book, sometimes we're reading different books, but I see that as a moment of self-care, just winding down and just having a moment where you're disconnected from the outside world, because I think the world's so heavy right now and we all need to find moments where we kind of come inward and work on ourselves and just have a little peace within our home.
Into crafts and hobbies.
Oh yes, gotten into a lot of crafts and hobbies.
Yeah.
We have a hobby room now, which has been also a game changer.
Yeah, Charisma's been looking like a self-care pro. I love it.
I needed it because I went too long without doing it, and it is such an important thing that we all need to start doing more, is taking care of ourselves. Yeah,
you got to take care of yourself before you
Yeah.
can give care to others.
yeah, exactly.
And my respect, and specifically like with our content and putting our lives out there and opening that door to feedback and criticism and trolls. A great self-care approach for me has been to give everything the same weight.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean, like, if I'm going to get really upset because someone is, being hateful or trolling us in the comment section or trying to, correct us in some way, if I'm going to get that upset about that, then I should be equally as happy when I see a positive comment
Yes.
thanking us or expressing appreciation for sharing this.
Yeah.
And when I do that, the 99.9% of positive comments all of a sudden just drown out that negativity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because our brains are trained to go find the negative. And when you let that happen, and you let that take hold, it can feel like that 0.1% is what's dominating the whole conversation, when it's not. It's not. So I want to give everything the same way. And when I do that, the positivity shines through.
Yeah. The other way we've been focusing on self-care is diving into stoicism.
Yeah.
So we've been really learning more about being more stoic in our lives and, taking on the weight of other people's response to our actions, or how
You're not taking on that weight?
Yeah, not taking on that weight. And having more control of our emotions and how we respond to other people. So it's made us happier, because let's say we, have a disagreement with someone and we say what we think is virtuous and we do what we feel like is the right thing. Letting go of how they're responding and how much weight we hold onto that response. Does that make sense? I'm still learning about stoicism, so I'm having a hard time explaining it, but it has made a great difference in our lives so far.
Yeah, it's helped us retake control.
Yes.
Because and in that way, I don't even let myself respond to those negative comments, but I still let that positive emotion flow from the supportive comments.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I can control that.
Yeah.
Have either of you read the book, The Courage to Be Disliked?
No,
Ooh.
but I was in therapy last Wednesday and my therapist recommended that book, so it is next on my list.
Okay, that is the book that put me on my stoicism journey. And yes, everything you just said makes complete sense to me. And there's a part in that where they're talking about that, how people respond to what you say, like trying to figure that out before you say it. That's just not your task. And I find myself 10 to 12 times a day going, not my task. Because
and it's so freeing. It's so liberating.
Yes.
Just like letting go of that, because it's out of your control anyway.
Yeah.
So like, why are you trying to manage it?
Yeah. Exactly. I love that you're a fellow stoic. Aaron, we got to get you on your stoicism path next.
Aaron is the most stoic person I've ever met, just naturally.
Okay.
Like, very much so. You are very good at being like, what they're thinking about me is not my deal. That's not for me to deal with right now. That's
True.
and you like what you like, and act in ways that make sense to you, which is, I think, a feat, and why I love having like women who are older than me in my life, because learning, like, people pleasing is just such a natural thing, I think, for anyone alive right now. And when you add social media to that, like, I don't know, I can't logically understand why social media fuels people pleasing so much, but it really does. And I think that stoicism is a great answer to that, because people pleasing, who's really pleased?
Like,
You can't please everybody.
Yes.
That's an impossible task.
no, it's just got to please yourself. That's where you just leave it at that, honestly.
Yeah, kind of similar vein, but my fiance and I were just talking about the concept of how a relationship is rarely ever 50-50. You know, a lot of times it's like 90 today for me, 10 from you, because that's what you got. And then we were kind of talking about, you know, that's a core belief of our relationship in general. But I think our updated version is we were just saying that, you know, it's not even like about breaking it down into who's doing how much of what. It's just, can we get to like 85 together?
I
Yeah.
love that. Oh,
When every day doesn't even need to be 100%.
yeah.
You know, like even today, you know, we usually get up really early and work out, but you know, we just wanted to sleep in.
Yeah.
And you know, we looked at each other and we're like, it's okay. That's
Yeah.
fine. We'll get back to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, you know?
And if we don't get back to it tomorrow, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
And that is really how you make routines stick, is that you don't like shame yourself when it's not working that day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I also start my days with morning yoga, and sometimes I'm just laying on the floor and I'm saying to myself, this is yoga.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're going to stay in Shavasana all 30 minutes today.
Whole time. Whole time. Well, I think we have one more question for you. Erin, you want to take it away?
Sure. So you are best friends with Shane and Hannah, who are on our podcast. And what is it like to have such good friends that really understand disability and caretaking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think before meeting Shane and Hannah, we had some friends in the disability world, but most of our friendships weren't other interabled couples. So there would be certain conversations that we would have that it would be some sort of disconnect because we had a different routine than they would have. So having friends who understand us and our dynamic, who we could go to about certain questions or topics, it's just so great to have that connection with somebody else. It's so freeing to have those conversations as well. We meet other interabled couples and immediately we're talking about bowel programs and this and that. And we're like, oh man, we really like jumped right into it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we love being really good friends and best friends with other people who understand the dynamic that we share.
Yeah. And it's the understanding, again, that's so important. Like going back to the beginning of this conversation, sharing about the first date with Charisma, you know, what bonded us so quickly or what endeared me to her so quickly was that she understood a lot of me already.
Yeah.
And so when you find a couple like Shane and Hannah or any other interabled couple, like there's that level of understanding that already exists that is just so comforting and just makes things easier. It just makes it so much easier.
I know. I don't know. I love the disability community. I think there's so much understanding. There's so much empathy. There's so much love. And so we're just more and more we're diving into making connections within the disability community, more than we have, because before the channel, we really didn't. I didn't as much. You did because you coach, but you know, having social media allows for connections that probably wouldn't have existed before.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the understanding too revolves around like misconceptions, because other interabled couples, they have to deal with the same misconceptions about their relationship that we deal with.
Yeah.
So we can connect about that as well. And you know, how frustrating that can be to have to like prove your relationship or I mean, no one needs to prove their relationship, but like there's that pressure sometimes, that this is real. And like, you know, we really do love each other, because there's this misconception that disabled people can't, or that, you know, with caregiving, it just ruins that aspect of a relationship. So, other interabled couples deal with that too, and they get it.
No, we love it. We love it.
Yeah, I love that you bring up misconceptions in that, because I do think that they're like, ultimately, when we wanted to make this podcast, it was kind of just this, man, how come people make sad faces when they hear the word disability? Because we're part of that community and we smile actually because we have the experience. And I think that that's been like the true delight of this podcast. You know, we're only talking for an hour with our guests, but there's such a deep understanding. And it's so cool to be in a room, quote unquote, but a room where we have this shared understanding and this shared vocabulary. And I also think, like what you said, Cole, there is a level of this shared frustration, like this shared, like, well, that's bullshit. Like that, and it's just so nice to have someone that you could just say that to.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's great. It's a great community to be a part of. We want more and more interabled friends. Friends of all, obviously.
Sure,
We're open
of
to
course.
all kinds of friends, but there is a very special bond that we have anytime we have a friendship with another interabled couple. And interracial. That is another aspect of our lives that, like, we has a big impact on us as well. Like, a lot of people see the interabled aspect, but the interracial aspect brings a whole layer of misconceptions and frustrations as well.
Yep.
Absolutely. I'm also in an interracial relationship, and and there's a layer to the interracialness that I think helps with like the understanding of, we spent a good chunk of this talking about how it's so nice to have someone who doesn't focus on disability. However, that doesn't mean that we're saying we want people who are like, I don't see disability. Similar to we don't want I don't see color. Like, this is a huge part of who I am. I need it to be seen. And I think that when you have that relationship with where you can already have those conversations, be it about disability or race, it does make it easier. Because it is part of this, just like, please see my whole humanity.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I love this part of me. Like, I am a Black woman. I want you to see that. Cole is a disabled man. Like, we want you to see that. Like, it is a part of who we are, and we love who we are.
Yeah, we would not be who we are without both of those things.
Exactly.
Man, it is just so nice to hear, like, we love who we are. Like, it's so good. And I think that, we have so many episodes of this show now that have shown this over and over again, but it's always just so wonderful to be reminded, like, how much joy exists within our community. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on this show. We've wanted to talk to you both for so long. So this exceeded every expectation. This was so wonderful.
Yes, we loved it. Thank you so much for having us. You both are great at conversation, asked amazing questions. We always love new podcasts and interviewing with people because we're always curious what questions they come up with. And we love it when there are questions we've never heard before. So thank you for that.
Y'all did a great job.
Yes.
And we're very appreciative of everything that's happening over with Easter Seals.
Yes.
Y'all are such a benefit to our community all over the place. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll work with you more. We love working with you, and Cole and Charisma have done some awesome stuff for our campaigns. And yeah, it's just, thank you for saying all that. Erin, any closing thoughts?
I think it was just great conversation and so awesome to get to know you as well. So thank you.
Thank
you.
Truly so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Erin, thank you for being my co-host. I love you so much.
Same.
And listeners, viewers, thanks for being here. It's a brand new season. I promise it's going to be a great one. And tune in next time for another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
Oh my goodness, you are such an inspiration. Wow, you really are. You're so strong. Can I pet your service dog? Ugh. 1, 2, 3, let's go! We are artists, parents, teachers, good guys, bad guys, students, leaders. I'm not your inspiration, yeah, I'm fully who I am. Got my own expectations that don't fit into your plans. I'm not your sad story, so I wrote it in this song. Everything you know about disability is wrong. Not everything you know. Yeah, everything you know about disability is wrong.